Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For the validity of any act of ibadah, there are certain conditions that must be met. Once these conditions are fulfilled, then the act of ibadah becomes valid. Otherwise, the act of ibadah becomes invalid. These conditions are divided into two. We have what we call shurutul wujub wa shurutul siha. The conditions for qualification and the conditions for validity. The condition of qualification means that once these conditions are met, you as a Muslim, you have qualified to carry out that act of ibadah, to engage in that act of ibadah. While shurutu siha, these are conditions to validate or invalidate that act of ibadah. Let me cite an example. Once you attain puberty stage as a Muslim, you are obliged to observe Salah. That's your qualification ticket. You're already qualified to observe Salah. But this does not mean anytime you observe the Salah is accepted. No. There are still other conditions to be met which are classified as sharutu siha. In the process of observing Salah, you do not perform ablution. Despite the fact that you have qualified to observe Salah, but you did not perform ablution. Performing ablution would render, or not performing ablution renders that Salah void, because that is sharutu siha. It is a condition that validates that Salah. While the first one we mentioned earlier, puberty stage, is what qualifies you for the act of ibadah. In the case of Ramadan, I won't be differentiating between sharutu siha and sharutu al-wujub. I'll just explain all the conditions. But in this video, you will learn about 3 conditions, and then in our subsequent videos, we'll pick the remaining conditions. The first condition that must be met is al-Islam. For anyone that wants his Ramadan recorded in his mizan of good deeds, such person has to be a Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا مَنَعَنَا أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the reason why we rejected all their acts of ibadah, particularly their charities, is because kafaru billahi wa rasuli. They reject Allah and His Prophet. They are not believers. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. On the day of Qiyamah, those who are not believers are going to bring forth mighty good deeds, numerous good deeds, a lot of them. But فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. On that day, we will render them void. We are going to turn them to dust. So this explains to us that for someone to earn reward by fasting, such person has to be a Muslim. Even if the person observed the Ramadan exactly how Muslims perform Ramadan. The person eats sahur, did iftar, did the necessary things, Allah will not accept it. The second condition that must be met is al-aqlu. That's sanity. An insane individual is not obliged to observe Ramadan. Even if he does, Allah will not accept it. The evidence for this, the Prophet ﷺ said, Rufi al-qalam an al-thalath, al-majnoon hatta yafiqah, wal-na'im hatta yastayqiv, was-sabi aw as-sagir hatta yahtalim aw hatta yablug. The Prophet ﷺ said there are 3 categories of people. These people, once they are still, in as much as they are still in that state, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not record any sin for them, neither will they get rewarded for anything they do in that state. The first one is what? Al-Majnun, an insane individual. An insane individual has no sin and he has no reward. If an insane individual kills someone today, فَلِيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ, he is not going to be punished on the day of Qiyamah for taking the life of someone, even though that's a different discussion on its own. If an insane person drinks alcohol today, he is not liable for it. If he does any atrocity, commits any atrocity, he is not liable for it on the day of Qiyamah. At the same time, if he does any good, maybe he observes Salah. I've seen a video sometimes ago where a madman, from his appearance, he looks like a madman, was in the masjid and was observing Salah, even though he wasn't observing it properly. And I saw people taking video of that person. I didn't see the person live like in front of me. I saw the video actually. So people were taking the video and posting it and saying all sorts of things. That individual, the Salah is void. Because of what? Because he's insane. Now there is a mas'ala. How about someone who lost his memory? Somebody who loses or who lost his memory rather can't remember anything. It happens a lot. I don't really have any personal, experience with it. I've not seen anybody physically or personally. I don't know anybody on a personal ground, but I've heard that people lose their memory out of accident. They don't remember anything. Such person, yu'amal mu'amala al-majnun, is insane as far as Sharia is concerned. So such person is not obliged to fast at all. And if he regains his sanity maybe after 10 years, it is until when he regains his sanity, that is when he starts fasting. The remaining years that he missed, he's not going to repay back. He's not going to pay back those years. So, because Rasul said, Rufi al-Qalam and the Thalath, once the person, in as much as the person is in that state, he is not obliged to do anything. So the third condition we have is maturity or puberty stage. When somebody gets to the point of puberty, al-ihtilam, so for the female gender, once they see their period, the first period they see signifies that they are qualified to engage in act of ibadah. And for the male gender, they have to wet dream, what they call a wet dream. So once they do that, they have qualified to start engaging in acts of ibadah. But that being said, Sharia permits us to train our children when they are still very young, and where we know that they can actually take up some act of ibadah, even though they are not going to get rewarded for it, except in Hajj and Umrah. We don't have much time to discuss all these things, but basically, we can train our children. The Prophet said, Abu Ayyub, he said, Muru abna'akum bis-salah wa mabna'u sab'a wadribuhum 'alayha wa mabna'u 'ashr. Train your children. Tell them to go and observe salah. Take them to the masjid. Teach them how to observe salah when they get to 7. Wadribuhum 'alayha. When they get to 10, age 10, whether they get matured at that age or not, wadribuhum 'alayha. Warn them sternly. Be stiff on them when it comes to observing salah. This is how to train children. So for the case of Ramadan, the companions, كانوا يصومون صبيانهم, they trained their children to observe salah. فإذا بكى أحدهم أعطوه اللعبة. So when their child start crying, maybe after some hours of fasting, they would reward the child. So this is an act of training the children to understand certain acts of ibadah. So for the third condition that we mentioned is what? Maturity. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us better understanding. Inshallah, we'll take some other conditions in our coming classes. Do not forget to share, like, and follow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.